Is it starting?
Yep.
Hi everybody, good evening. It's really nice to see you on our Lovely People webinar. We did have Beck Freeman joining us tonight, but she seems to have been held up. So we're just going to kind of get on and have a little bit of a discussion. And just before I started the recording, I was having an interesting conversation with Martin, who's gone strangely and mysteriously quiet now.
I'll let you do the introduction.
I'm only joking, Martin. So I met Martin just a few weeks ago, really. He came on one of our retreats. And I don't know, how long have you been around the principles, Martin? And do you want to share?
Probably, yeah, okay. Probably a bit over a year, I guess. I was introduced by a friend of mine, Megan Taylor, who's also been to one of your retreats, I believe. And we've kept in touch. I've been down with them and we've had huge discussions about the principles. I've also been following online programs and sort of training myself up and thoroughly enjoying it and getting annoyed and confused and, but it's nice to have people to talk to. Certainly being on your retreat was very good. I didn't get the disturbance of children and school and all of that kind of chaos, and it was a really good way to get the speed up. One of the reasons that I sort of spent time on the principles is because my 15-year-old child has problems from sort of bad marriage in the past and things like this, and it's just him and me now living together, which is fun.
Yeah, it can be fun living with a 15-year-old.
Yeah. So we have for the last 5 weeks been going to visit Terry Rubinstein, who started this new organisation that's targeted at children. So we were already talking about this, but so about a dozen children, single children with a parent, with each one in a room, sharing ideas in a different way, in a less sophisticated way than we would, with adults. So breaking it up into short bites. Each meeting's only an hour and a half or maximum 2 hours. And 2 hours is getting a bit long for some of the kids. Their classes are 30 minutes at school and things like that, and they can get a bit rowdy as well. They get quite excited. So the way she does, she breaks it up and gives you an idea to discuss and maybe some pictures or a small video, and then takes the children and a group of parents, maybe 4, into a separate room to discuss that thing, and then come back with their ideas. And it was really good to see all the children getting very excited about it. And you could see right at the beginning some were very quiet and shy, hiding in the back. And as they got into it a bit more, got to know the faces that were coming along, and it's everybody at all different ages and creeds and blackness and whiteness and everything else. Well, everybody was there, which was really good. And so, seeing them get more and more confident at the end, and some of them getting, you can predictably, very, very loud at the end, and try to dominate the proceedings, as children do. But Terry's very good with children. I think she's got quite a few of her own.
Was there an age, were most of the children a similar age to your son, or was the age range?
He was the oldest one, actually. I think the youngest was probably about 12.
Right.
So 12 to 15, 16, but he was definitely the oldest. And, he was pretty good at it, and he didn't sort of jump in and all over it, but he did certainly got his, his opinion across when he felt it was valid. And he was he wants to be an actor. And right at the last one, which was yesterday, was it? What day is it today? I don't know. No, Monday. She said, could we film some of the children, please, for our advertising and everything. Of course, his hand was up straight away, and she interviewed him a bit in front of the camera, so he was really chuffed about that.
Have you seen a difference in him? What do you think he has got out of this program? Have you seen a difference in him?
I definitely have, and it's more confidence. And he had been exposed and had some work on 3 principles before this started, so he had an idea of what was happening. And then with this program and with the other children present, which I think really made a difference, gives them a little bit more confidence. He's certainly improved and is more cheerful generally and more responsive and conversational with me, which has been, you know, kind of a bit of a problem. And he's also been trying to help some of his school colleagues and friends with some of their problems. So, you know, it's working out quite well. So definitely recommended if anybody has children, this kind of program. It's, you know, broken up into small chunks, simple phrases, terminology that the children can take away with them. You know, not asking them to write down, no bits of paper and pencils or anything really, or anything like that. Huge piles of sweets in the middle of the table.
always good. Bribe them. If nothing else works, bribe them.
Yeah, that's right. Indeed.
So what about you? What difference did it make to you, and even this program and coming across the principles? What's changed for you?
Well, I definitely have changed. I definitely feel more confident. One of the things, I've been unemployed for a while, which has not been the best times, and having the principles kind of available to me has made me show up better in things like interviews, and been able to maintain my sort of general confidence over time, where, you know, in this kind of situation, the money's getting low and so on, can really hit you quite badly. But, you know, I now don't really let that happen to me, and find a way of perking myself up and get on with things. And so this kind of training, and I work in a local charity shop and things like that, that all are there really because, you know, I never would have really done that before, but it's like inspiration comes. Okay, this is what I need to do. I need to get out and meet people. And so I just got up the door and went down the street to find this shop. So, you know, it has definitely made a difference to me. And also, some of you may know, I'm trying to just kind of this week really start. I've been thinking about it for a while, starting up a kind of wellness discussion group for the local area myself. One of the reasons
why we started, like when Beck wasn't going to be here tonight, we thought so what is behind this? What is this wellness group? What made you decide to start that, and what are you hoping to get from it? What do you want people to do?
Well, as I say, this area has troubled kids, and you know, the parents, some of whom I've got to know. Zach just arrived from school and he's shouting, "Hello, hello!"
Yes.
Yeah. So where was I? Yes. So the aim is to meet more people, is to introduce more people in a kind of a gentle way to the three principles. Oh, look, have a look at this camera. Where's he gone? Oh, he was here a minute ago. And generally try and get a discussion group going in the area.
So what area do you live in case anyone is watching this and might be interested in coming to your group? What area do you live in?
A smallish town called Leighton Buzzard, which is just south of Milton Keynes, which most people have heard of, but probably best avoid. Yeah, so the catchment area is actually Milton Keynes, Aylesbury, and Leighton Buzzard, and stretching into Bedfordshire. But when we started looking, there's nobody really doing anything much around this area at all. So, you know, hopefully, maybe it'll be a nice thing to do. Maybe it won't work, but, you know, either way, it will be an experience and a learning thing. I mean, ultimately, I think I want to work with the three principles, but I certainly feel I need to deepen my own involvement. And my background is IT, but in very big businesses. So I've worked in the likes of Rolls-Royce and huge consultancies and Boots the Chemist and stuff like this. So I feel that I could take this probably with some others, three principles into business.
Yeah.
So that's my sort of longer term aim.
So the idea behind starting your meetup group is to get some experience and to deepen your understanding.
yeah, but also to help, other people, and some of the parents of the kids who are struggling. I can contact those people through the school probably. So see how it goes.
Yeah, that's great. So has anyone else got anything that they would like to ask? Any questions they want? I mean, we're here now. Let's make this a discussion. Let's make this an open discussion. Has anybody, from their experience of the 3 principles, what's changed for them? Has anyone got anything they would like to add to this conversation, or anything they want to ask Martin? I thought Julie was going to say something then.
I think tonight is a prime example of the sorts of things that have probably changed for all of us.
Absolutely.
Less than an hour before we're due to do a webinar with a guest speaker, and the guest speaker messages to say, I might not make it.
She did say really sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she said really sorry. But I think any one of us 3 a short while ago might have had a bit of a meltdown about that. Something we planned isn't going to work the way we planned it. But I think
I just forgot to tell Deb.
You forgot. I thought you said you forgot to have a meltdown. Yeah, but I think it's definitely for me. Definitely, the whole idea of life unfolding has been massive. And as soon as Lucy read out Beck's message, I was like, well, we'll just see what happens when we get on there, shall we? And we came on, and 2 minutes later, Deb had invited Martin to be a guest speaker. How life unfolds. Yeah, I think that's been a massive one.
Yeah, I think the whole life unfolding is definitely, I mean, certainly for us 3 at the moment, 4, Julie as well, this whole life unfolding thing is massive for us at the moment, just kind of going with the flow and seeing what happens next. And interestingly, like you said, about an hour before this webinar, Beck messaged us. I actually came on to the webinar and you said, oh, Deb, there was something we forgot to tell you about an hour ago. Beck's probably not going to turn up. Okay, right you are then.
Deb won't worry about that.
And like you say, yeah, very much. I think kind of doing these webinars and doing the meetup groups that I do and things, and Martin, I'm sure this is going to unfold in the same way for you. There's such an amazing learning curve because you never know. I mean, I think one of the things that was interesting in a group that I run the other day, I was asking if anyone had got any questions and, what was going on for them. And this lady came back to me and said, oh, do you know what? I'm okay when I know what's going to happen, but I'm not keen when I'm in a place where I don't know. And I was like, oh, right. Okay. So you haven't realized that the whole of your life, you're living in a place where you don't know. We spend our entire life, we just live in the unknown and then kid ourselves with our thinking that we know what's going to happen next. And on the times we get it right, we're like, see, told you, I knew that was going to happen. And, on times, if you'd have asked me earlier on today, I'd have said, oh yeah, we're going to have this webinar tonight, Beck's going to turn up. And then lo and behold, it doesn't happen. And I think it is learning not to be scared of the unknown, not to be frightened of what's going to happen, and to kind of realize that we have our own wisdom, all of us. We have that wisdom. And it's only when our thinking starts to go massively into overdrive, when our thinking starts to really rev up and tell us that we don't, that's what just gets in the way of us allowing this wisdom that we've got to come through and let whatever was going to happen just unfold. A really, really nice conversation with Martin about the group that he's going to do and about the iHeart program that he's done. I think it's brilliant to teaching this understanding to children and young people is an absolutely wonderful thing to do. I mean, teaching it to anyone is just great, isn't it? But to see, I've had similar experiences to you, Martin, with my son, just watching him. My son is 20 now, and kind of watching him, how easily he just kind of grasped this was just magical, watching the changes in him. And interestingly, like you said, he'd been around the principles and he'd been introduced to it. I think, my children have never actually been on, they're grown up anyway, but, they've never only been on any programs, they've never done anything, but just living around me in the way that I have changed since I came across the principles. You can't say, I'm sure they all pretty much know about it, because you can't. Was that true of you?
I found it interesting that I sort of realised that people, especially say children, but even adults, don't need to kind of immerse themselves into it in the way that probably most of us here are choosing to do. Just light knowledge is enough to make a difference to people, to gain a bit of an understanding about thinking and how it works. And maybe those people will explore it, but they've probably already got some benefit in their life by a general understanding. Maybe occasionally topping them up and giving them a prod to remember.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those, isn't it? It's like that even the smallest of insights can have a huge impact and a huge effect on you. And then I think it's kind of down to the person whether they want to deepen that understanding and see it in more places in their lives, or whether the insights that they've had are enough. And it's a personal choice, really, isn't it? How much you want to explore it. I mean, I think for me personally, I think there's nothing more fun than spending a day sitting around and learning more about how my mind works, learning more about this. And then the other great thing, the thing that we tend to do when we get together down in North Devon, and like when you came to the retreat and things, what we love to do is actually explore how life works and then get on and do a little bit of living as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you kind of need the balance, don't you? You don't want to spend the whole time in the classroom just learning about it. It's nice to get out there. And I think those are the times when you kind of go out, like tonight, really, when this webinar came on, we set up a webinar, we do this. It's when you do something in life and then it doesn't turn out the way that you expect it to. That's when you notice what you've seen and what you haven't. That's when your insights, things that you now know, come into their own, really. That's when you see a difference in you. And that's what I loved about when I came across the principles. And I'm sure you will have examples of this since you've been doing this iHeart course with your son. It's like, I would know, you would learn something, you would have a conversation with somebody, you would kind of hear something. But when I would realize that things were different for me is when things would happen, normal things that happen in life. People let you down, people don't turn up, or something breaks, or, things that you don't expect, the things you didn't want to happen, not the way you planned. Something goes different to the way you plan it to go, and your reaction is different. And that's when you realize, oh, something's changed in me. You're reacting differently to something.
Yes, indeed. I'm trying to get my girlfriend a bit engaged with it, but I don't think it's something you can force anyone. I think they have to want to do it. But it's already led to some kind of misunderstandings occasionally. But it's life.
That is a really interesting one, because very much when I first came across the principles, my whole thing was, my children need to hear this, my partner, my boyfriend needs to hear this. And we've all got, invariably when new people come to my meetings or anything, they've got a list of people that they think, need to know this. Absolutely, whoever. We all have our list of people who we absolutely know could really benefit from the principles. And I mean, interestingly, like Lucy and Becky here, I came across the principles and Lucy came to visit me and she heard something in a conversation we had. So she started to get really, really interested. And then she was very much in a place of, Beck needs to hear this, Beck needs to hear this. And we were kind of like, well, do you know what? There's nothing you can do. And it was just, and very much the thing that I've learned with trying to force my children to hear this, and trying to, my friends and people that I can absolutely know would benefit from it. It's almost like the more you try to push it onto someone, the more allergic to it they become. It's kind of like, it's like what is it they say, desperation stinks, and your desperation to get this person to do it really turns them off. And kind of when I had the realization, actually, this understanding has always got to be about you. That's it. And if you're lucky enough, like I was lucky enough that Lucy kind of took an interest off her own bat, she decided she'd heard something and she was interested. And then at some point when Beck had a crisis, she'd obviously heard something enough to be like, oh, maybe I should, this was the way forward, whatever. She'd heard something. But equally, my children, they've never been to a principal's, they've never been to a conference, they've never been to anything like that. And yet, me understanding this has massively impacted them. And I just think, if somebody does show an interest, brilliant. If somebody doesn't show an interest, brilliant. Just deepen your own understanding, and that's all we can ever do. And I think once we deepen our own understanding, we become a gift to the people around us. Equally, the people around us become huge gifts for us. They are put there absolutely as a gift for us to deepen our own understanding. And it's very much bring it back to you. So yeah, the girlfriend thing, I would kind of just keep being you, and just keep being more the best version of you that you can be, because of what you understand. And either at some point she'll become curious or she won't. And from, again, like with my partner's never particularly shown an interest. And yet sometimes he'll come home now and say, oh, somebody did such a thing. And I can hear myself, I was you. I was talking as if I was you, So I think, when we're around these people, it has an impact.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it can be a hard one sometimes when it's people we care about, and the people that we love and the people that are closest to us are often the most difficult ones for us to keep staying our grounding around. It can be very challenging when it's our mum or our girlfriend or our child or something like that. It can be a challenging one, that can. So has anyone else got any questions, or would anyone else like to contribute to this conversation at all?
Would you mind mentioning how much the iHeart course was, Martin?
Oh, it's very cheap, actually. It's £90 for 5 sessions, including the parent and the child.
Oh, that's pretty good.
That's very good.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And you can just send the child as well, and that's only £40, I think, or something, or 50.
Okay. So did some children go on it on their own then?
No, they didn't. And I really think it was good that at least one parent went along, because there's someone to bounce off and someone to talk about it later, and to have both had the same experience, I think. So,
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really, really great idea.
Yeah, they're going to carry it on, and she'd offer us another 2 sessions as well for £30. But that's a real bargain for these kind of things, and we're definitely going to go along in a few weeks for the last 2 sessions.
Yeah, that is brilliant.
She's really good, and she has a team of other people there too to help. So it's good. It's not just Terry talking, but of course that's always inspirational anyway.
Yeah, Terry is definitely an inspiration. She's a lovely lady. Wonderful lady. Thank you, Gavin. Has anyone else got any questions or anything that they would like to contribute to the conversation? So, okay, so Martin, how did you come across, your friend introduced you? How did you, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit more about you, your story, about coming to schools and what changed for you.
No, it's boring.
No, it's not.
No. So, I've got one sister who's 2 years younger than me. We don't see each other that often, although we only live about an hour apart. We have our own lives. I'd love to spend some time with her on 3 principles. She had, we as a family had a shock that she had a son and a daughter, and the daughter was very into horse riding, as was just becoming successful at equestrian journalism. And then they got a new horse, and they were riding together, my sister behind Jessica. And Jessica fell off the horse fell on her and killed her straight out,
Oh, goodness
which is a hideous thing, of course, to happen, and affected my sister very, very badly.
Yeah.
For a real long time. So that's that's the kind of thing that happens, doesn't it?
That's life, isn't it? This is the thing. Life doesn't always happen the way we would choose life to happen.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So they live in Watford, where I was born. They still live there. I haven't moved that far away. I hopped around places like High Wycombe and so on, but it's really all within a kind of an hour's drive around. I've been a lifelong motorcyclist, and I still ride when I can. Not the full biker experience, though, not the leathers and all that. Just for pleasure. I've been self-employed for the last 15 years in the IT industry, which has been good. It pays well, but then the money still runs out when you're not bringing any in, and you get divorced and all that kind of thing. Part of that divorce is also why I'm kind of interested in the 3 principles, because my wife was an alcoholic,
Okay.
and it became violent and all that kind of stuff. And so I had to basically make a choice between her or my son. But to be able to and to see that the health services are really not very helpful to people in that kind of situation, it's quite, they're stretched, we understand that, and it's difficult. But basically she had underlying mental health problems which caused her to drink. But then, of course, as soon as you're drunk, they say, well, we can't deal with you at all until you've got the alcoholism out of the way. And so it's a never-ending circle. So we haven't seen her. She lives in Cornwall, so a really long way away from us. We haven't seen her for 4 or 5 years now. So yeah, it's all interesting.
So has coming across the principles kind of given you a little bit more of an understanding maybe of what was going on for your wife? And obviously you talked briefly about your sister. Has it kind of helped you see these kind of things differently?
Yes, certainly. With the alcohol and all of that, certainly I feel better for that. I've been quite I'm a relatively kind of relaxed person anyway. Not too hyper. I'm a yachtsman as well when I can, sailing and things like that. So yeah.
I mean, it's really when we have these kind of experiences in our lives, we can absolutely see that one of the reasons why the health service is so stretched and isn't as effective as it could be is because of the misunderstandings within those, in those places, isn't it? It would be so useful to have more people within the health service and more doctors and more people like that have an understanding of the principles, because I'm sure your wife would have been dealt with in a different way if people understood where their experience came from.
But also the children's service, which is called CAMS, which is Children and Adolescents Mental Health Service, they're really struggling as well, and that's quite not a very good service really. They're just they do a quick assessment and a couple of sort of traditional stick the knife in type of discussions, and then say, right, you're off, you're better, and you're off the books. It's not really. It would be so much better because they could do group sessions on 3 principles and deal with a number of kids on that together and all sorts of stuff. But they haven't got enough staff really to cover the work they need to do.
It is starting to creep in there, though. For instance, I don't know whether any of you guys are members of Innate Health, but
yeah, I am. Yeah.
Well, if you go on to their what's the name of it? It's in Media Library. They do those Tuesday evening sessions.
Yeah.
Well, they did one with a doctor who works in the health service. He actually works now for the government, but he's connected with the health service. And he was there with his wife. I don't know how long ago. Well, I think it was in January. I saw it earlier on this evening, but it sounded pretty hopeful, actually.
That's good. I mean, I did ask some of SAC's counsellors if about the 3 principles. They had no idea what I was talking about.
No, I think the problem he was suggesting is that there's no research and documentation that gives it credibility.
Yeah.
So it's just a sort of a wayward science that doesn't have any. I don't know what the word would be for all that stuff, but anyway,
it's kind of credibility, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was to do with the research into it, and he did an article that got printed in one of the esteemed medical journals with Michael Neal and him and his wife and somebody else. Apart from Michael, I can't remember the guy's name now, but they got this thing printed in this medical journal recently. So there is moves afoot, there is like a.
Yeah,
I mean, for instance, they actually paid for him to go and do a course with Michael, so they paid for that. The guy put his case across, and they went, "Oh, okay." In the end, I mean, obviously it took a bit of leverage, but in the end they paid for that. And I think he might have done One Thought as well, and they paid for that as well. So, it's not like they're blanket, completely shut off from it all.
No, I don't think it is. And I think definitely, and I know the stuff like you're talking about, the iHeart program that you're talking about. I mean, I think we've had some conversations with Terry and Brian about that. And that is very much, they're taking that into schools, and that is very much curriculum based and very much ticks boxes, with the things that they need to do within schools. And I know Terry and Brian are very, very keen to do that and get research, get statistics about what happens to people after these things. So, I don't think, and everywhere, even in the short amount of time, I came across principles in 2011, and the amount of people that have kind of heard of it now, it's already, it's huge to what it was in 2011, the amount of people that are beginning to hear about it. And I just think the more of us that hear about this and have shifts and changes, and then go into our workplaces, go into our schools, with our children and things, and sort of start making a noise, and kind of, when people have begun to hear about it, we're in the middle of massive changes, aren't we? And I mean, this is what these webinars are about. Let's get more people hearing about this. Let's get more people having the shifts that we've experienced, having these changes, and because I know from just the days when my children went through school, just not knowing where their experience comes from is really, really confusing. It can really mess us up, not understanding that what we are thinking in the moment, affects us. It really affects us when we get into our thinking like that. We have that experience. It really feels real and true. And when we don't know where that is coming from, and we believe it's coming from something outside of us, it hugely impacts our life. And kind of seeing the difference when people understand, and even if we do forget sometimes, coming back, noticing that we continue to come back. Because one of the huge things I've seen is that, like, when you begin to understand the principles and begin to see, we can trace back, I can look back over my life, and I'm sure, like the things you've described tonight, Martin, like with things that happened in your life, in spite of all, and we've all got, I don't think anybody kind of gets to, you don't have to be very old before you've got some kind of a story. Once you've been through school, you can have a story, like you said, with your 15-year-old son. He's already got history of things that he can kind of say, well, this happened to me, and this, we've had experiences by then. So we don't have to be very old before we've had life experiences. And I know for me, what I can look back and see, in spite of all the things that happened, there was still a thread of my okayness, a thread of this resilience. I could recognize it everywhere. I can recognise that in spite of all that happened, I still kept coming back. I still kept coming back to this place of being okay. And I'm sure you can see, you know, through your marriage and things like that, even with stuff going on, we're like those weebles, aren't we? Even when that's going on, we can kind of, with retrospect, when we look back, we can see that our okayness was underlying that all of the time. We can see that it was there. And even when it was really difficult, and even when it was hidden, and even when it didn't look as if we would get through something in particular, and, you know, even the hardest things to bear, we can kind of recognize that thread was always running through it. And I think certainly the massive difference with my son is that he kind of recognizes that now. And even when he's in a bad place, he's in a little bit of a bad place at the moment, actually. His head's playing up at the moment. You know, he's kind of, oh, I don't like my job and I'm not happy here. But what he can recognize is that that's more a symptom of where his head is than his job. And when we begin to see that kind of what we're, you know, as when we go down, nothing in our life looks okay. We can begin to see, do you know what, my job's not right, the people I live with aren't right, my furniture's not right, whatever it is, when we go down, stuff doesn't look right. And when we get to a good place, everything is okay. And we begin to see that thread that runs through stuff.
I just wonder why outside in thinking is so popular with the human race, really. It must be easier to just allow that thing to take over, because, you know, it's been around for a long time. And you know, and people have known about it, you know, the gurus and people like this, but it's never sort of caught on, if you like, as a kind of a better way to be.
I think it's because our thinking looks so real. Our thinking looks so compelling, doesn't it? You know, you try telling somebody, when somebody is down and they have no kind of, it's never occurred to them before, if nobody's ever told them that it's to do with what's going on in their mind, if somebody starts to feel down and starts to feel that, I don't know, their job isn't right or something, it's really hard to convince somebody in that place that that what they're feeling isn't to do with their job. They're really, 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 it's very convincing. Our thinking in those moments is very convincing.
Yeah.
You know, I liken it to, you know, when we go to, you know, this life that we're looking out here, we're looking at like the screen, aren't we? And when we go to watch a film, if we watch a television program or we go to the cinema and watch a film or something, the whole point of it is, if it's not good enough to get your attention, it's not a very good program. And, you know, life, you know, the special effects that our thinking can give are second to none. They are really good. So they do grab us. You know, we are taken in by it. And all of us, we all are all of the time. So you can really see why you would argue for what's out there, because it looks so real and true. It looks so compelling. And I think it takes, like you say, when we have these insights and when we begin to see, it does chip away at it. But I think when you look back at how gurus and people, I mean, I think that was what was amazing about Sid Banks, wasn't it? Because when he talked about this, he talked about it in a way that ordinary people who aren't necessarily the brightest bulbs on the tree and who aren't necessarily, you know, I'm not very well educated, I'm not that intelligent, and yet I understood what Sid said. It made sense. And when you think, you know, a lot of the time, if I try and read, even though I know that the people, you know, if I try and read old scripts about this, even though they're pointing to the same thing, I just can't understand what it is they're trying to say. I don't get it. And yet, when the words that Sid put it into made sense, it was like, yeah, that's my experience. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I get that. And I think that's what's been hugely different about Sid now. He's come up with it and he's kind of put it into words that make sense to, if I say normal and ordinary, does that really cover me? But you know what I mean. Kind of. Yeah, Beck has her doubts whether I'm normal and ordinary. Ordinary, everyday people. it makes sense to those people, and we begin to see, because I think it's counterintuitive. A lot of what the principles point to is counterintuitive. It's like, over the last few weeks, I run online courses, and we've been talking about money. And one of the things that I've really noticed, again, we talked about this a little bit tonight, that whole, when we get desperate for something, as soon as we're desperate for something, it's harder for us to get it. And I've really noticed that in my own life around money. When I was desperate for it, it was harder to get. And love, when I was desperate to be loved, it was harder to find that. When I desperately want something, and yet it feels like it's counterintuitive to kind of pull back and think, no, don't try and get this. Come back to yourself. Like when we were talking about, you want your girlfriend to understand this. It's really easy for us to want somebody else to understand the principles. And it's counterintuitive to kind of say, bring it back to you and you just learn this. Because then those other people will be taken care of. Because everything in you is screaming, no, don't bring it back to you. Sort them out. They need sorting out. And I think, the way that we work as human beings, it's like that. It's the other way around to what it looks, the way it looks as if it works. And it can be quite difficult until you have had some insights, possibly, and until you have seen something different for yourself. It's quite difficult for us as human beings to act in ways that is counterintuitive.
Yeah.
If you're kind of short of money, it's really difficult to say, do you know what, take a breath and be perfectly okay with how you are and where you are. No, I need to work really hard. I need to do this. I feel desperate. Have you got no idea what it's like? And it's the same, all of life works the other way. And I mean, to me, that is why that's why we've been fooled all this time. That's how we've been fooled, because it's counterintuitive. And then Michael Neal said something. I heard on I think it's in one of his books. I think I read it, and he said that there was this young pilot who was training to be a pilot, and he was in a trainer plane, and they were learning something about, I don't know, he got into a mess in the plane anyway, and it was all going horribly, horribly wrong. And these aeroplanes were set up that if you took your hands off the control, this aeroplane would self-right, and then you could take the controls again. And so, this pilot is kind of getting into a right mess. So he's radioing the control and kind of saying, oh, I've got into a right mess, and I'm really trying to hold it, and I'm really trying to right this plane. And the trainer's kind of going, let go of the controls, let go of the controls. And he's kind of going, you can't hear me. This is really, really out of control. The last thing I should do is let go. You're obviously not hearing me right. And he's going, no, just let go. And in the end, like, this pilot lets go, and the plane self-rights. And I think that's the same with us. When we're in our lives and things seem to be getting out of control and things don't seem to be going the way we want them to be, everything in us wants us to hold on tighter and try harder to make this self-right. It just sends us into an even worse tailspin. And it's counterintuitive to let go. And yet, when we do that, when we just let go, and this neatly comes back round to the very beginning of this webinar, when we let life unfold, life has a habit of unfolding beautifully. It self-rights and it unfolds.
Talking of life unfolding, I've got to go. Food needs to be prepared.
I love it.
I'm being nagged by a text.
You should turn your
See you
phone off
soon.
on webinars. No, it was great to catch up with you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. So, has anyone else got anything that they would like to add to tonight's webinar? Would anyone like to ask a question? Would anyone like to join? Oh, he's left his camera on. We're going to have an empty room.
I like his stairs.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, cool.
Who's Judy?
Is it Judith? So, it's Judith. Hi, lovely Judith.
Hi, honey. Yes, I have a question.
Go.
Can you just run over that whole thing? 'Cause I've just got here.
Well, I absolutely would, but I'm afraid that I'm speaking to Martin. Martin did a lot of the speaking and he's now gone, and I can't be Martin. Oh, sorry.
So Martin stepped in, did he?
He did. Martin became Beck. Yeah, very, very courageously. Yeah. So,
Excellent.
I mean, basically, we just talked about life, how life works, how amazing it is when you understand how life works. That's it, really, in a nutshell. You're up to speed now.
That's fine. Well, nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I left my will as it was.
Oh, okay. There's life, you know, doing life. You leave your wellies behind. So has anyone else got anything that they would like to add or share, or, you know, any comment they would like to make? Any questions? Did somebody say something then? Oh, I think it might be someone's telly.
Oh, it might be mine.
That's okay. That's fine. Okay. So, Beck, what else have we got? Who have we got next week as our guest?
So Mandy Spray is our guest next week.
The lovely
Assuming she isn't running late or doesn't turn up. We'll see how life unfolds that one for us. And for anyone who's interested, we have our next 20-day online course starts on the 1st of April, which is about parenting from the inside out. So either parenting or having parents, which some of us have.
Yeah, I find it as challenging dealing with my parents as I do dealing with my children. Both ends of the parent spectrum.
Yeah, I feel so challenged by my parents. I don't want children. So yeah, if you want to join us for that, if you go on the website deborahsimmons.co.uk, all the information's on there. You can join in with our membership. And our next Great Conversation Day is on Saturday, the 21st of April. So put that in your diaries.
Yeah, if you're anywhere around Devon, it would be really good to see you there. Assuming I'm not going to be moving that weekend.
Well, yeah. We'll see how life unfolds.
Let's see how life unfolds. At the moment, it looks like I'm going to do a Great Conversation Day on that day. Let's see. So is there anything, so, and we put out a daily inspiration email. If anyone doesn't get that and would like to sign up for that, you can do that on the website, and we put out a newsletter most weeks. Obviously we do our Lovely People webinar, you're here. That's about it really, isn't it? So,
June.
what was that?
Oh, the retreat in June.
Oh yeah, our next retreat is June the 11th to the 15th. If anybody is interested in coming on the retreat, they are fun.
They are indeed.
Certainly an experience, yeah. An experience not to be missed.
Quite.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, if there's nothing anyone else would like to add to tonight, or anyone would like to ask, or anything, we can wrap it up tonight. Oh, someone's put their light on. It's nice to see you, Sharon. Have you got a dog on your lap?
Hi, Judy.
Oh, cute.
I'm going to say bye-bye.
Bye, Judith.
Thanks for popping by.
Bye, Judy.
Bye, everyone. Bye.